What will the next 10 years of the Pokemon franchise look like? We're going to be talking about the future of Pokemon today, everything post-Legends ZA. We're talking Generation 10, new Pokemon remakes, ports, future Legends titles, and fundamental gameplay overhauls. Lore Keeper Toby is here to help me out today. And by the way, this conversation was recorded a few weeks before the 2025 Terra leak. I encourage you to be mindful with spoilers in the comments below. My name is Dusty Go-Goat. Welcome back to my headcanon. Right now when I'm recording, this is the timeline that I'm looking at. So check this out. 2026 is the big year. It's the start of Pokemon's 30th year anniversary. This also happens to perfectly line up with the 10th generation of Pokemon, which will be the first new mainline generation game on the Switch 2. We have learned Generation 10 is going to take place, or at least be an island hopping adventure, some sort of seafaring adventure is kind of what the idea is.
But I will also note there that, yeah, like even if that's happened as the result of a data breach, first of all, the credibility of that is unclear. Second of all, plans change. Generation 10 is kind of a turning point. The 30th anniversary is a turning point where they need to sort of begin to broadcast and tell players, okay, we're going to do 30 more years of exactly the same as before, or this is kind of the new intention, this is the new goal. So I think if there are going to be any big shifts, it will either be in Generations 10 or 11. It might be that Gen 10 is focused as a celebration. Knowing Pokemon, they're going to try and do both. They're going to try and honor the past, but also show a little bit of like what's going forward. And I agree with you. I think Champions exists to give room for the main series to not be beholden to the turn-based battle system, which is like kind of archaic at this point. It's a little outdated, it's slow, it's great for a competitive, like, chess is archaic, right? It's a fun game. The people who play Pokemon as in turn-based, that's how they treat it, which is wonderful. But in terms of like a fun, dynamic gameplay experience, video games are capable of so much more than they were back in the days of Red and Blue, and the battle system of ZA to me looks so much more exciting.
It's seamless, man. Like from overworld to battle, it feels seamless. Like I think that's what I'm looking for.
Right. And I think the thing is that there were choices that were made at the time where they took Pokemon Red and Blue and they had this vision of monster tamers and their creatures doing battle, and we saw this depicted in the manga, and we saw this depicted on the TV screens, and they said, how do we best represent this in video games? Well, I think the only way we sort of can is this, that's what they had at the time, was the turn-based battle system with the sprites. That's how they chose to do it. That's obviously been pretty core to Pokemon's identity over the last 30 years. However, realistically, what they're doing with ZA, it's not that they're just picking some random other mechanic. They're picking battle mechanics, like you say, that are seamless, that are immersive, that sell the same vision that they've always had for Pokemon, which is these dynamic kind of creatures actioning in sort of real time around each other. And I think we've seen them already explore with it a little bit in like the way that they did the battling system, or rather lack of, in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Legends Arceus kind of played with a different turn order. And I think, even the Let's Go system where you run around, or Let's Hang Out system, or whatever it is, where you run around with your Pokemon, you hit a button and they just go out and battle. I think Pokemon has been eager to test the waters with that. And ZA and I think Gen 10 are going to be a big test, as well as Champions, to see if they can sort of start moving away and leave the competitive scene they've built with Champions for the next 3 to 10 years, until, well, maybe forever, or until they have some other system. So I actually completely agree. I'm on the same page. 5 years is interesting. That was the only thing I disagreed with that you said.
Oh, the 5-year gap?
I think the Pokemon
I can explain that as we keep going, but what do you think?
Well, my feeling would be that Pokemon needs to sell new designs. That new creatures need to keep on being introduced. And when you introduce, however many you do in like Legends ZA with the Megas, or Legends Arceus with like the Hisuian Pokemon, you kind of, you have 20 designs, and that's great, and you can make a lot of merch around that. But you sort of want to make way more merch than that if you're the Pokemon company. And I just think that like a new generation where they dunk 70 to 150 new designs is is not the part of the formula that doesn't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the thing, that if they can just do that every couple of years.
And I actually believe that this 30th year anniversary celebration is going to extend beyond 2026 into 2027, 28, and maybe even 29. I think there's a good shot that Generation 10 lasts as long as Generation 9 did, which would be 4 years. So if I'm looking at my timeline here, Generation 10 will drop at the end of 2026.
Yeah.
We'll finally get our hands on this game. And then I think we're going to receive a flurry of different DLC packs, not just in 2027, but also in 2028. And I think Game Freak will want to maintain Generation 10 and support it as a true living experience. While Game Freak is delivering DLC experiences, introducing new Pokemon, which supplements the rest of the franchise, some other companies, maybe Ilka, maybe Pokemon Works, some other games might pop up, while DLC is released throughout the year to support the Generation 10 title. I'm thinking about how there's always a yearning for remakes, right? For revisits to regions. We want to see our favorite games and favorite characters and favorite Pokemon return in the mainline games. And I feel like that's almost like a limitation. There's an expectation by fans to revisit these locations, but there's a disconnect from what fans want and what Game Freak can, like, or the Pokemon Company can deliver in a generational cycle. So that's why I think maybe 4 years for a generation, for Gen 10, is a sweet spot, because there is room, as I'll go on, to include these multiple DLC packs that come out that release new Pokemon, new stories. Maybe they're even optional. Talking about other Legends games we could see. This is something I've said about like a lot of the spinoffs. I would get a lot of enjoyment out of like taking my favorite Pokemon from Pokemon Sleep and moving them into home and using them in other ways. So
yeah, I agree. I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity. I actually thought when Pokemon Sleep came out, it was sort of announced as a sort of add-on to Go, and so it always struck me as a little bit odd that you couldn't do that. There is something very powerful about Pokemon Home. The frustration that fans show when Dexit happened, and when we found out very recently that a Pokemon transferred into Legends EA will not be backwards transferable to older titles. That frustration bubbles from a point of fans wanting to carry their Pokemon with them from adventure to adventure to adventure. The goal of Home now is to get people to take those Pokemon, and I think they're going to be less interested in moving. The Game Freak is less interested in you moving them into the next game, more interested in, hey, move it into Home. Move it into Champions, where you can monetize it because
move
you
it
can
into
improve
Pokopia.
it and all the rest of it, or maybe Pokopia
or whatever other spin-off we might see next year.
Yeah, and I do see a lot of like Game Freak and the Pokemon Company trying their hand in games that like they want to be long-term plays. Pokemon Masters, Pokemon Cafe Remix, Pokemon, what are the other small ones they do? Pokemon TCG Pocket.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
I think Champions is going to be like that. It wouldn't surprise me if Pokopia was like that, where it's like, and here's this year's update for Pokopia, and it's just a staple of the Pokemon franchise that they're trying to kind of monetize on more regularly than just the price tag of the game.
Yeah.
And then I think your home subscription is pretty crucial to that, because if you're paying for a home subscription, you're paying for a Nintendo Online subscription, and if you're paying for that, you're probably more likely to then pay for the DLCs and all of the content that comes with the DLC and all the rest of it. So it's this huge self-feeding system, and I know I'm looking at it through a very cynical like business lens. I realize
that's totally fine
as I'm talking out loud, but I think if we're trying to predict what the Pokemon Company are going to do, I think you got to look at it from the where's the money point of view, because I think if you look at it from the what's cool point of view, those things are not always the same. Actually, very often they're only half the same. They look cool, and then underneath it's like, cool, give me your money. I think it looks a bit more like that.
No, I think that's totally fair. That's a good balance to strike. But okay, I want to kind of flesh out this Gen 10 game a little bit more.
Okay.
If this Generation 10 game is some sort of island hopping adventure, this feels so right for a 30th year anniversary game. Very similar to the Alola region, right? The Pokemon Sun and Moon, which was it was also an island hopping adventure where you had all these different cultures being represented during the 20th year anniversary. When I think about this Generation 10 game, where you are maybe you have your own little ship, or maybe it's a Pokemon that you ride, right? In between all these different islands. I think about Wind Waker, the idea of your adventure happening so far removed from civilizations, and then every new port that you go to, right? It's like a little treasure. It's like a little discovery in itself, right? And I think in this new Generation 10 game, the opportunity that I see, I'm imagining a game where you can go and visit ports of all of these new regions that are basically undiscovered to us, which is really cool as a Pokemon fan to think that maybe there could be a game that opens up, right? It's like when Paradox Pokemon are introduced to us, right? Oh, cool, we get new Paradox Pokemon, but guess what? That kind of suggests that there's even more Paradox Pokemon that we don't even know of, right? So this idea that we're getting little glimpses of specific isolated cultures from different Pokemon regions that maybe we could see over the next 30 years, right? That just feels kind of right. And then I think the opportunity here is like in DLC to then revisit not entire regions, but new, basically like full 3D. It's like as close as we'll get to an actual modern remake on a modern engine, right? Seeing Kanto, seeing just one part of Kanto or one part of Galar, one part of Alola in a full 3D space is kind of what I'm imagining in the years after Generation 10.
So I love the idea. I love the idea. So let's say we've got this Greece region. I like the idea of this. You've got your mainland, and then from that you've got your regional variants and new forms and all the rest of it, and your new Pokemon. But from then, I don't think I could see you like actually traveling to like the port of like Vermilion City. But I do think what we could get is something very Blueberry Academy like, where islands are being set up across the wider ocean, and with those islands, they're setting up artificial biomes. The biome of Kanto Johto,
I love that.
Of like Hoenn.
That's really cool. Yeah, settled by
a lot of that.
These familiar cultures.
Yeah, I could see a lot of that kind of stuff, and in that sense, there could be some new big islands to explore. But I think there would be new parts of this same region, or maybe they would be new islands of those regions in the same way that the Blueberry Academy is technically in Unova, but we don't see any of Unova. I could see something like that. Okay, so Generation 10 on board. Totally there. Love the idea for DLC, and DLC I think is a sure-end thing for them. I don't see why they wouldn't do it.
I guess I just want to harp on this a little bit more, like, because this game is set up on this big celebratory year, and also the fact that Mega Dimension, to me, this Mega Dimension, that DLC for Legends ZA being a segue into Generation 10, I don't know. I really am starting to get the impression that there's going to be, I don't know, Mega Dimension to me, I haven't even played it, but to me it feels like an opportunity to like call back to things that have happened throughout the series. You know what I'm saying?
I see.
So like that's where my mind is.
You could have a legendary Pokemon that is causing dimensional rifts, shifts, issues across these islands that mean that while we're trying to set up the biome for the Kanto Johto region, there is this new DLC bad Pokemon that needs to be captured and stopped and yada yada yada, and that's existing across all the islands or whatever. I could totally see something like that. I think a lot of what you're saying actually is working for me. Like, so far, I'm on board with the speculation. Like, I'm totally here for it. Go on. What else are you thinking for sort of 2026 onwards?
Yeah, so Generation 10 will come out at the end of 2026. But leading up to that, we have obviously Pokemon Champions, and we know very little about this, but I think it'll be a living game, as you said. Pokemon Champions is going to be continually, added to. It will be a home for battles. I am excited for it. Again, I'm excited for Champions if it is unique enough from Generation 10. I think there's an opportunity for a Nintendo Switch online app that is entirely dedicated to Pokemon games. And this is just for the Switch too. And I think the reason why this could happen is because I do not think most fans would not buy a new game that is maybe like if there's a Kanto remake or whatever, right? If there's a Unova remake, a Johto remake, no one's gonna not buy that new game if they can get gold and silver in 2026. Like, I don't think they hit the same way. I think they're completely different gameplay experiences. So I'm imagining this NSO app being launched in 2026, maybe on Pokemon Day, and then maybe every 4 or 5 months, there's a new entry that gets added, right? And it's a slow drip over the course of Generation 10's lifespan.
Yeah, so I get what you're saying. I just don't think it would be a unique app. Like, I do understand, but what I've noticed that I think is particularly strange is so obviously we've already had Pokemon Stadium and like some of the GameCube games are now on their way. Something I found particularly strange is that Pokemon Colosseum and Gale of Darkness are coming out this year / next year. They're expected for the GameCubes on Switch 2. They have not been mentioned, I think, in any Pokemon connected Direct or anything at all. They are only in Nintendo Directs they're mentioned. That's really odd to me. I'm like, wait, if you're the Pokemon company, like, surely you want to advertise, but they're not. So what's interesting to me is I think it's probably some very complicated licensing and it's probably some very complicated stuff, but I think the re-release of older games is like, that's your domain, Nintendo.
A Nintendo
Pokemon
thing.
is like, not, and I think
that gives more evidence for why
But I do
new
think,
ports of these older games to come out like alongside Generation 10 and DLCs.
So I agree that I think that like Red, Blue, and Yellow for sure, or maybe even Green as well, probably Red, Blue, Green, Yellow, will drop on Nintendo next year. Like I think that's super likely. The last time that happened was for the 20th anniversary. Yeah. So like on the 3DS, it's now been 10 years. It's been long enough. I agree. I also, but I think what's obviously odd is that they're Game Boy Color games and that the Game Boy side of the Nintendo app feels like, is that not done? Like, are we not? I don't know if they're still adding old titles to that or whether they're onto the GameCube stuff now. Yeah. So it feels odd that they've been left out, but I do wonder if through discussions with Pokemon Company, they've gone, you need to wait till the 30th. Sure. But at the 30th, you can... The only, again, the question mark is the business brain that says, sure, hang on, how's Pokemon monetizing off of this? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, I get why, like, a new app, for example, might allow them to do that, but that might seem, if they're selling them individually, that might seem a little bit scummy. I could actually see them doing something maybe similar to Yu-Gi-Oh! Recently did a Yu-Gi-Oh! The Early Days collection, where they took all the Game Boy games. I could see a Pokemon The Early Days collection, Red, Blue, Yellow, Green, Gold, Silver, Crystal.
Pokemon Generations.
Maybe even Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald. Maybe Pokemon Pinball, Ruby, Sapphire.
No, Pokemon get those out of there. I just want the mainline ports.
I could see them taking all of those and just bundling them into one Switch game and selling that. And just to be real Nintendo about it, it'll only be available for the next year.
Sure.
$70.
Sure.
Like, I could see them doing something like that. I hope not. The hope would just be add them to NSO. Please just add them to NSO. But the fact that they haven't suggests that they're saving them for something like this, because why would you not have the most popular games from that console available to download? It's because you want to sell them later. When do you want to sell them? 30th anniversary. So I suspect something is lined up for them. And I would guess that would extend. It would definitely be Generation 1, and it might extend through.
It's got to be 2 and 3.
It might. It's got to be 2 and 3.
At this point, I'm like, it's got to be.
Because three is very inaccessible. Like, you can at least, if you have a cartridge for Generation 4, you can at least play it on a 3DS, which is an old console, but not impossible to get. But if you need a very particular older model of that to play the older Game Boy games. So I could sort of see them bundling it. And if there's that many games on it, if it's like, here's the first 15 Pokemon games from those eras, you sort of can see them justifying the price of $80 or whatever it's going to end up being to have that collection of ports, whether you agree with the justification or not. So I don't know so much about an app, so much as I think it might be like a limited time game.
I'd be happy with that. I'd be totally happy with that.
I think an app would then be sort of like, people will go, but hang on, why is it not just on NSO? Why are you making us pay for a separate app? Whereas, like, if it's a game, it's the same thing, just packaged differently.
Okay,
so I actually do agree with you. I think something like that's very possible.
It could go either way. I just think it's been too long since these games have not been available.
Yeah,
and with the rise of ROM hacks, I would much prefer to play these classic games on my Switch with a speed up button, just when I'm on the couch. Like that's the system. I literally have it right here. That's my system, right? I'm playing my Switch too. Just give me some ports. I think also something I think about is during the 20th year anniversary, when those, I guess it was the year after, it was during 2017, when the Johto games got ported.
Yeah,
I think every single Pokemon generation was at that time up to gens 1 to 7 were represented. And I think that's been missing on the Switch. And now that we're entering the second, superior Switch lifespan, this is the opportunity for them. So, again, what I'm thinking about. Yeah.
No, you go. And then
the thing that just keeps rattling in my brain is that, like, we all want remakes, but Game Freak cannot give us remakes of every single game. And I've wanted to enter the bargaining phase of, like, sure, give me more faithful remakes if they're good, but I mean, I don't think that's even on the horizon anymore. So I'd be happy with HD ports. I'd be happy with HD remake, like whatever. Like and that's why I'm also happy with DLCs that maybe give me glimpses at regions in full 3D. That's like, it hasn't been since Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire that we got like a modern remake where the game is where the story of an original game is brought up to the modern generation engine. You know what I'm saying? So
totally.
A lot of what I'm looking at in what I'm expecting in Generation 10 is these little revisits to the regions and the memories and the Pokemon that we love. And that could be through ports, that could be through DLC, that could be just through the main game, right? And I think some of that is also in the promise of champions, right? Take your favorite Pokemon into battle, right?
Yeah.
So that's a lot of the connective tissue that I'm looking at for Generation 10. Did you have something else that you were going to jump in?
Yeah. So I've just had another thought. So one of the issues with the Nintendo Switch Online thing is that, like, we're all pretty confident that I think that Pokemon Colosseum will not have Pokemon home compatibility. Like, that's just not going to be a thing. And probably that's not going to be a thing because none of the other none of the other GameCube games that would or Nintendo 64 games, like, none of them have that kind of compatibility. It's just kind of locked out. Sad, but is the case. However, by not having the Pokemon first 3 generations in an app, but instead having them as their own game that is a Game Freak handled project
that you could purchase at a store.
You can now use those, transfer those Pokemon to home, right?
Yeah, dude. And that's how fun is that? Which is
great. And also, here's the final selling point. Here's how they justify that $70. You'll remember, and this is what made me think of it, is that 9 years ago when they did Gold, Silver, Crystal, the big selling point for Crystal is, oh, and by the way, here's Celebi at the end of the game.
Yes.
All they have to do, red, blue, and yellow, exactly the same as they were.
But you get Mew.
No, probably not. Too lazy. Gold, Silver, Crystal, exactly as they were. And for the first time since their release, Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, here's Jirachi, like, just in the game. Like,
here's Deoxys, here's Lugia and Ho-Oh available. Like, here's the Faraway Island.
Here's the Faraway Island event.
All of the
programmed in the game.
Like, there's so many things that are no longer available in those old games that they could port in.
It opens the door for potential Diamond and Pearl and Black and White 2. But to be honest, we don't need Diamond and Pearl because we've had BDSP really recently.
Exactly.
But what it does open the door for is something I know you're going to get into and something I'm definitely going to talk about, which is the Unova whatever's going to happen. Yeah. So should we move on and talk about that stuff? Because I think we're gassing each other up a little bit, and, like, I can sort of see maybe, but I'm sure there's someone in the comments going, these two dreamers. Go on,
it's all good.
These two dreamers determined to dream away all their money.
but I really think in it's kind of a long-standing joke that, like, I'm always predicting ports because I think that is just like an easy win. And as someone who likes to replay Pokemon games, I'm like, it feels like it is disappointing that they're, these old games are not available, and then I gotta whip out, my DS or whatever, right? But it's the 30th year anniversary. I've been wrong the last 5 years, and if we look at history, we're gonna get those ports. The ports are coming.
The 30th anniversary is about celebrating the past as well as looking forward.
Yes,
and I like. Do you know what I think? And it's lame because I know the game is not well received. Mario Kart World is this big exploration of the whole world of Mario Kart. This island hopping adventure, the idea of visiting places that feel like other regions.
It's beautiful.
Is that not just Pokemon World, the game?
Dude,
we're
yes.
exploring,
And that's another, and I also think that's been such a long-standing like request by fans that we want like a region. People love Johto because you get to go back to Kanto and it makes the world feel so big.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe there's not a lot to do in Kanto, but it makes the world feel big, and people like DLC for that. But I think this could be the Pokemon game beyond open world where they say, listen, you can go to every single generation or whatever, every single region.
Something that represents it, yeah.
And I have to, like, in the fine print, right, before I get the comments, like, I'm not saying every single region will be fully explorable. What I'm imagining is one city on the port of maybe one of every, right, like one city of every region, scaled up in the same way that we see Lumio City in Legend ZA being scaled up, right?
Sure.
Where you're not seeing the entire, that would even be too much because that's an entire game. But my point is, these little touchstones. Right?
What I'm imagining is even less ambitious than that, which is like an island that is
and that's cool too.
DLC,
that is cool.
Like an Isle of Armor that is like half Kanto, half Johto, and an Isle
and
of
I hadn't
Armor
thought of that. That is cool.
That is half one, half another. Like I'm thinking about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But go on. What are we thinking of? Is that it for 2026? I've actually got
that's a lot for 2026.
That is a lot.
Not to mention all the other like random things that they might add to that year for the celebration. But I do think, I think there's a lot there that that's not even. I don't even think it's that. Honestly, I do not believe it's what I just said is unbelievable.
Really funny
I can see that.
Is that Generation 7? You and I both have 2020. Oh, sorry, Generation 7, 2027. You and I both have Gen 10 DLC, written in. Like
easy.
You've got it on your thing.
Easy.
I've got it on my little whiteboard here. Obviously, why wouldn't they? At least 2 rounds of DLC that year, I would have thought, for the Gen 10 games. Either following in the footsteps of what you were talking about, or just being unique to the region. I could sort of see it going either way. You've got 2 specific things written. You've got like Kanto Alola. Is there a reason you chose that?
Yeah, if Generation 10 is going to last another 4 years, I'm imagining that this is actually going to be like a really polished game that in Game Freak and the Pokemon Company have planned for it to last 4 years, and so they've planned out content to supplement this living game. I love it, Toby. Pokemon Worlds, right? Like this is a big living. Maybe it's Pokemon's first living game, to like a serious capacity.
I get what you mean.
So
I don't
what
think
I'm imagining.
Do that. I don't think, but I know what you mean. I think World is more in the spirit of it. It's almost like Project Pokemon World. I don't think it's like. I don't think we're going to get the Pokemon Live Service platform game. No. If anything, it's Champions, and that's just for battling.
Yeah, but okay. So I wrote down 2027 and 2028 will both receive Generation 10 DLCs.
Interesting.
And I have 4 specific regions here, and they're kind of a shoo-in for. I still think they support what I'm trying to say. This Gen 10 game could be, but they're kind of selected in a very specific way where Kanto is obviously the DLC after the 30th. It's like we haven't been to Kanto in so long. It would be cool to see like a section of Kanto playable. That just feels like an easy.
We had Let's Go.
I don't think it counts anymore. It's an old game. So I picked the Alola region because it has Z moves. We just were in Kalos with Mega Evolution. I also chose Galar for maybe Dynamax. And I think there's a different version of this that I wrote where it was Paldea as well. And the idea is that all of these, again, playing on the idea that maybe Generation 10 could reintroduce all these different battle gimmicks, again, as a celebration. This is kind of like the thread I'm trying to pull on. I don't totally buy this myself because I think the battle gimmicks, that celebration will take place in Champions. They're battle gimmicks. They will be in the battle game. And so the other little thread here is if we go to Kanto, maybe there's also a Johto aspect to that. And then I also think we need to go to Unova. Johto and Unova are the two places that we have not been to in so long, and I'm trying to work those into this at some point. You know,
Well, I've just written down a list of all the regions.
sure.
I disagree with your assessment about Kanto, and especially if we get the Gen 1 re-released
That's
on,
fine.
we're definitely not getting. I don't think we get Kanto like as like a feature.
I want to
The
see
next-
Kanto in 3D.
Sure. Let's go Pikachu and Eevee. What are you talking about?
No, but
it already exists.
it's a fixed camera. It's a grid-based game, and it is not scaled up. You know,
One day we will get that, but it's not anytime soon
Switch
because
3.
we had Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Like, it's just not gonna happen, right?
Switch
so
3.
we've got so Kanto's a cross-off. Sinnoh we just did. Kalos we're just doing. Galar and Paldea are the most recent two, so I'm just gonna cross those off for the moment, which leaves us with Johto, Hoenn, Unova, and Alola. Unova's a bit of a question mark because we just got the Blueberry Academy. There's all sorts of funky stuff they might do with Unova.
Yeah.
Unova might still be on the table. Johto is definitely in need. Hoenn is yeah, kind of in the zone, honestly. Hoenn and Alola. I guess Alola is still relatively modern, but like really Johto, Hoenn, and Unova are like in need of a little bit of attention. I think before we get to that point.
Sure.
So when I look at your list here, Kanto, Alola, Unova, Galar, I think Galar and Kanto, they are on the Switch. As 3D games, it's too modern. I don't think I think we could get areas that might reference them, that might feel a little bit thematically, but I don't think we're necessarily going to get like whole DLCs that are hinged on that kind of thing. And also, DLCs don't need to be hinged on any particular region. Like, you just have a DLC, right? So,
I mean, we went to Kitakami in Generation 9. How cool is that?
I also, a whole new area, right? And I just wonder, 2 years of DLCs does seem like a lot. But what's interesting is what I've got written in June 2028 that ties into all this is what you've also got written in 2028.
Yes. So again, the timeline that I'm thinking about, because we've only seen DLC take the place of a new game right at like the year following a new generation. I'm imagining these DLCs to be a little bit tighter, and so like again, and I don't even need to harp on it. I'm just saying, like, you know, maybe there's 2 packs in 2027, but maybe, you know, maybe Ilka could put out, or the Pokemon Works could put out a title as well, around the holidays, right? Generation 10, like again, Generation 10 is a separate game from a faithful remake or a port or Pokemon Champions. So if even the following year there's a continuation of DLC for Generation 10, later that year for the holiday, we could also see what I wrote is Pokemon Legends Rainbow.
I'm assuming that's Johto, right?
Yeah, I'm imagining a Johto title, right?
Yeah. I've been a fan of this idea for years. I've got a whole video about it. I was obviously completely surprised and blindsided by Legends EA. I don't think that eliminates Johto's need, though, and I actually think more than ever Johto has a need. Johto, and I do think Rainbow Johto could be a Johto Kanto game. Like, people often think about those two in together because obviously when you play those games, you visit both regions, and also because the Pokemania, well, often people think about the original 151.
Yeah.
The time frame it was happening in was Generations 1 and 2. They were both kind of part of that thing. Togepi, Ho-Oh, Snubbull, Marill, they all appeared in Gen 1. There's a lot of nostalgia love for Johto.
All of the new evolutions that were introduced. Like, I feel like half the decks of Johto are evolutions to Kanto.
I think a lot of what happened is Generation 1 happened in Japan, and it took a couple of years before it kind of hit the West, and when it did hit the Western world, Generation 2 was already kind of beginning to like trickle in and getting its promo and all the rest of it. So even, you know, literally from the first episode of the Pokemon anime, we're seeing Gen 2 Pokemon. Generation 1 and 2, what we all joke, oh, there's only really 151 Pokemon. There's actually really 251 Pokemon.
Yes.
And it's that's the nostalgia. So anyway, I'm rambling now. But
no, I love it. I
think we could get a Legends game that wraps up Generation 10 as a swan song to the beginning, and also helps. What's really important about this is helping bring the lore, I'm saying this as a lore fan, of those first 2 generations into the fold. And what I mean by that is in Generation 4, we got the legendary creation dragons. Then we got the original dragon in Generation 5. And then anyone who's watched my channel knows the Generation 6, 7, 8, and 9 all focus on some kind of legendary dragon whose body comes from space in some way or another and has a tie to the phenomenon of the region, that all share a connective tissue back to the life force of Pokemon. And then with Oras, they folded in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire into that. And to this day, Lugia and Ho-Oh are the only box art legendaries that don't officially have another form. The lore of Johto, while it is connected through like the Kimono Girls and the Sinjo Ruins event in Heart Gold Soul Silver, it's still quite abstract to the rest of the franchise. And Kanto is not a realm of mythology. Like, there's not a lot going on there. We don't know much about the legendary birds. So it really is time to bring those. This would be the perfect title to bring the legendary birds, legendary beasts, Ho-Oh and Lugia and Mew into the story they've been telling over the last like decade or so.
And they could introduce like and to tell this story. Not only could they do like time travel shenanigans with Celebi. I think that's a really cool opportunity to show us the history of this joined region, the Johto, Kanto, or whatever you want to call it, the
Tojo.
The Tojo region, right? But they could also, give these Pokemon either new forms, new mega evolutions, or even just, we didn't even touch on it, but if there's a Generation 10 gimmick, maybe that shows up in this Legends game.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think I think a Pokemon Legends Johto game, Rainbow is what I'm calling it, could be really special. And that's how I get my Kanto remake, I think. Right?
I think Ho-Oh is the perfect Pokemon to represent this because it is... because
it's rebirth. It's a phoenix.
Oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought about that,
dude. Yeah,
it is, like we say, it appears in the first episode of the animated series. It is intrinsically tied to Ecruteak City, which when you think of the legends of the Pokemon world, it is maybe the top location that comes to mind for a lot of people. It really is the culmination of the Generation 1-2 arc. Mew might also make a good candidate, but I sort of think, like, even the I Choose You movie, when they chose to revisit and celebrate that, Ho-Oh was the featurette Pokemon. And I just think that, like, it actually makes a lot of sense that 2028, to wrap up the Gen 10 saga, we would see that. I want to make one more pitch, though, for Generation 10, 2026, 2027, 2028. Okay, I want to make one more shot here.
Please.
You mentioned Ilka games. I think we could see an Ilka, or ported, but maybe not port because of what we're also thinking with the older games, of Black and White. I do think it makes sense when we're celebrating the 30-year history of Pokemon that we stop at the 15-year point where we moved from sprites to 3D. I could even see them doing a 2D HD remake of Black and White. Maybe not Black and White 2, but certainly Black and White, with maybe some elements of Black and White 2. But that would be like an exterior company. Like, I don't think, like, it would be wild. I think
the Pokemon Works is like a new company that was developed with members of Ilka.
I could see them doing something like that, and going the Dragon Quest Octopath Traveler route and appealing to that fan base who have been saying for years, we want to see the sprites. The reason for that is not just to appeal to that fan base, but it is a celebration of the exact halfway point in the last 30 years and the transition moment from sprites to 3D. Now we see that blended together. Again, what a wonderful way to celebrate the 30th anniversary. So I think you want to think about the 30th anniversary as not just next year, but the whole of Generation 10. And I think it would then make sense that you have Generation 10, the world adventure where we see a bit of everything, and we get the revisit to the oldest stuff in like those flat ports. We then have these like Gen 5 revisits that celebrate the halfway point, and then we cap it off with a Legends game that shows us a little bit of the future, but also a lot of the past, which is what we get here, before moving on to, as you've got it written and I'm on the exact same page, 2029, Gen 11, like time to move. to the new formula, whatever that bit is.
Yeah.
And I really don't have much speculation after that. Like I'm
Sure.
that's where I'm at, you know.
No, I'm gonna get you inspired in 1 second. I do think it could be extended, like we said. Generation 10 could last 4 years, in which case, Generation 11 starts in 2030, and I do think the years are kind of arbitrary. My pitch for Generation 11 is a return to a Japanese-inspired Pokemon region. I imagine a new region that is to the east or north of what would be the section of Japan that the Johto and Kanto are based on. So a really cool Easter egg from Generation 9 that I just can't get out of my mind is the land of Kitakami, right? That DLC that we did, the teal mask, right? The whole story with Ogerpon took place in a place that I feel like it's like essentially confirmed, takes place in a Japanese inspired Pokemon region that is not in any of the other regions that we are familiar with. Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, or Sinnoh. It takes place somewhere else. To me, when I think about Pokemon, it is the aesthetics of this, I don't know, like the countryside of Japan.
Yeah. I like what you're saying about returning to a kind of new Japanese region for Generation 11, because if Generation 10 is, about like that looking back, while also shedding a bit of light on like the mechanics and experimenting with the mechanics of what we want to do going forward. Generation 11 really is about a new beginning. It is about saying, okay, we've done 30 years. The 40th anniversary of Pokemon will not be as big as the 30th. I don't know why. The big one's the 50th. When you get to the 40th, you're thinking about the big one's the 50th. Do you know what I mean? Whereas 30 is like, it still feels like a huge accomplishment. For whatever reason, I think this, and the 10th generation as well, we've also just surpassed 1,000 Pokemon. Like, I think we're at a really big celebration point now. And I think Generation 11 is about newness. It's about rebirth. It's about saying this is what the franchise is going to be for the next 20 years. Like, this is what we're aiming to do. And so I agree that, like, starting, I think it's really important that with Generation 11, we start with, I think, the foundation of what made Pokemon. I almost wonder if the story and the scale of the myths and legends might come not down to earth a little bit, and we do something a little bit like they tried to do with Black and White, where it's a little bit more of a revamp, and it's a little bit more of a let's return to form.
This is so clear in my mind now.
Magical creature capturing.
Yeah.
It feels like Pokemon. We're Breath of the Wilding the formula.
Usually when I'm talking about like what Generation 10 can be, I get a lot of pushback, and people, you even said this. You said, I think it'll be a half step. If that is true, and Generation 10 doesn't go the full mile in delivering a really bold Pokemon experience, this symbolic rebirth after Generation 10, this is what the Generation 11 game would be. It's the developers, it's Game Freak imagining from the ground up, what would Red, Blue, and Yellow be if they were developed in 2030?
Yeah.
You do that, you soft reboot, I guess a hard reboot, a franchise by taking it back to the roots.
Yeah, 100%. And Pokemon have tried a number of little reboots. Like, it's hard to think, like, how did they do that? Generations 3, 5, and 6 all have reboot-esque elements about them. 5 is the heaviest of these, that kind of indicate that this is the, and 7 a little bit, but they all have stuff that kind of indicate, like, hey, this is a new beginning. But I think truly Generation 11 is... Pokemon's plans got hijacked a little bit by Pokemon Go's success. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee kind of getting into the pipeline. Also, the way that they kind of forced Pokemon Z out so that they could work on like Sun and Moon and get those out for that 20th anniversary deadline. I think we're moving into the 10th generation a lot more prepared. Also, there is not a big technical jump to do in the same way there was from 2D to 3D. In fact, I think we're at the point there that not only are people going to be a little bit sick of open world, especially if we've done this big world hopping adventure, the only place to go is down. The only place to go is focused. A clear art style. This is what Pokemon is. A clear direction. It does not have to be a giant region that is like...
There's so many catchings from like that were established in 1996 right, that have just been carried over kind of arbitrarily, but they actually hinder the gameplay experience.
I think games like Legends EA, where it's all set in one big city.
Yeah,
and
dude.
I think games like you know, this constant like we need to move. Like, I'm glad we've gone to open world. Like, it's the game we've always wanted to see, and it's the thing we've always wanted to see.
It's the direction that we've always wanted to see.
Yeah. That said, once we've had it, it's cool. Like, go try something else. And I do think that Generation 11 is exactly what you've said. If we were making Red and Blue today, how do we do that? And what I'm not talking about, and I hope this is not what Game Freak is thinking, is how do we just copy paste the designs and do sort of what they did for Unova, where a lot of the Pokemon are like copies over. But actually, like, how do we make something that feels like a new start for Pokemon?
This Generation 11 game could neighbor Kanto. It doesn't matter.
Well,
but it'll have a lot of visual language in artifacts, right? There'll be things in the region that remind us of the old, right? Maybe there are regional forms of the starters of all these familiar Pokemon. There's cross-gen evolutions, like, so there's all the connective tissue of the actual Pokemon, but you could I'm imagining this Gen 11 game takes place, what would this be, 35 years later after Red, Blue, and Yellow? So this game could take place 35 years after, maybe they round down to 30, and you have returning characters, right? One of the Elite Four members is Misty or something, right? Like, whatever you want, all the fan service can be there while still carving out a core identity. It's not the Indigo League, maybe it is the Burgundy League. I don't know. Like, it's
I get what you mean. Like, I think it's about sort of like working out what is tied to that classic Pokemon formula that we like. What have we picked up along the way that we really, really like? And if we were making a Pokemon game for the first time today, like, do we keep gyms? We keep badges, right?
I think you could.
You know, we keep 151 Pokemon. No, we can't do exactly that many. Okay, is it one mythical? How are they included in the game?
Sure.
How are legendary Pokemon distributed? Which were the best ways that we ever did that? I think that's kind of what Gen 11 is about, and it's just about sort of setting the bar for what people should expect going forwards. Because if they don't do that, I do think there's a very real risk that people, by the time you get to generations 12 and 13 or whatever, you're just going, oh no, not another one? Here we go again, you know?
Yeah.
So I think largely we're in agreement, and I also don't think that any of this is crazy unreasonable. Like, we're talking about the 2026 to 2029 period, right? So this is a 3-year period.
Yeah, it's not that far. This is going to be on Switch too.
Yeah, this is all on Switch too, and what we're effectively talking about is a new generation.
Yeah.
Champions and the Ditto game. This is a Spirit Side game, so that's fine.
No, dude, you're disrespecting Pokopia.
Yeah,
I'm pretty excited for it.
Champions, maybe some kind of Generation 1, like, classic collection-y revisit type thing where we get Red, Blue, Yellow. So that's all in 1 year, and that's for a 30th anniversary. I mean, you look at what's happening with the Mario, you know, they've got everything going on right now. Makes sense. Next year, DLC, maybe some exterior company, Pokemon Works, Generation 5 type thing, maybe. Cool. Yeah. And the following year, Legends, Johto, with then the next year, I suppose, them being this new start. We're both in agreement. We have the same stuff written down.
I love this new start. I really do. And
Makes
then just
sense to me.
And then right after Generation 11, I'm thinking this is just for fun, right? So if this game takes place,
highly speculative, let's do it.
Yeah. If this game takes place in Japan, in a Japanese region, I zoomed out on my map and I said, you know what would be kind of cool? Australia's right down there. When are we going to get an Australia region? Maybe we got DLC in Australia, or maybe just in, you know, one of the islands or one of the countries around it. And then if you go, that's south. And if you go north, east of Japan, you got Alaska, which is technically part of what would be Unova. So I thought that was just kind of fun. Those are pretty big land masses that have distinct climates.
They could be their own future regions, though, right?
They absolutely could be. But I just thought those were kind of fun.
I like that. I can see that.
And then kind of a pipe dream Legends game that I think, if we don't get a Johto game, I'd like to see this, is Pokemon Legends Ultra, right? This is a Alola, an ultra space adventure. It's a sci-fi Pokemon Legends game. Super futuristic. You're traveling through space and time. I think this would be really fun.
I think at that point we kind of are at the point of like, Alola should get a shot, you know, at that point, I suppose. But at that point we kind of are there.
And I think I also gravitate towards Alola for a Legends game specifically because in Legends ZA, Mega Evolution is what's being featured, and this is totally reinvented through the combat system, right? The fact that it's real time. And the Alola games, I think the Alola games have been disrespected more than anything when it comes to its battle gimmick with the Z moves. And the Z moves could be kind of cool in a Legends style, right? Where there is real-time combat, where you have to charge up just like a Mega in order to do your move. That's kind of fun. You have to actually do the dance. You have to do your silly little dance.
I see it. Sweet, man.
Let's see.
Thanks for having me.
These are all my thoughts right now. Subscribe for more speculation videos. Consider joining me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member to support this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments what you think I got wrong.